everyone. I'm Aliza Sherman, and I'm the CEO of Elementa and the author of the book Cannabis and CBD for Health and Wellness, co-written with Dr. Junella Chen. I am here today with Dr. Swathi. This is not her first time here with us. We really enjoy having her here. I'll have her tell about herself, but just in quick summary, she's a pharmacist. She knows a lot about cannabis and other kinds of plant medicines. And so that's why we're welcoming her today for this. But before I let her tell you a little more about herself, I just wanted to say that we often do conversations and just conversations, but sometimes when we have more technical events, information we want to give to you, we will use slides. So today we are going to use slides, a little different for those of you who are used to just the conversation. And that is just to help frame all this information, because it's going to be a lot of new information for a lot of us. The other thing I want to mention is that we're doing these every Wednesdays and Sundays, 12 p.m. Pacific time, 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We speak with experts, we speak with authors, and generally the main overarching topic is wellness. And that could take all sorts of different forms. For example, we have a love coach coming up in a couple of weeks who will talk about love during the pandemic and dating during the pandemic, which should be a lot of fun. So just wanted to give you a framework of where we're coming from. And now let's just dive right in. So the main thing I want to do is get our slides up and running, because there is a bio slide. So then we'll do the sort of intro at that point. Does that sound good, Dr. Swathi? Okay. Yep, yeah. I'm so used to doing these conversations now that when I have my doctors and naturopaths, pharmacists, scientists, that's when I switch back to the webinar. So I'm sort of still in the casual chit chat mode. Okay. One sec, everybody, while I do a couple of buttons here. Let's begin. The first few slides are just me making an intro to you all. Our goals today: empower you with better information about, well, in this case, plant medicine for health and wellness, but typically we started out Elementa talking about cannabis, and to introduce you to our community for those of you who are brand new. We produce events. Right now, it's all live online events, but we, up until March, we're meeting in person in cities across North America. We were in 75 cities, and we would have 20 to 30 in-person events bringing women together to talk about cannabis, CBD, plant medicine, and other wellness topics. So now we're doing it all entirely online. We also review products. Right now, it's the majority of the products we review are cannabis and CBD products, but we are also starting to review adaptogens as well. We're getting all kinds of mushrooms and different things to try, like
so
powdered.
Exciting.
I know, like these powdered mushroom supplements that you add to your coffee or your tea. I mean, just really interesting stuff. So I can't wait to begin publishing some of those reviews. We also do some online live video reviews. I also, to everybody, we got a giveaway. Woohoo! This happens to be Urbana. This is a little bit of a sample photo, but I will later show you live the actual bags. We're going to give 2 little bags away to one lucky winner. These are usually odor-free bags. The one bag, the longer one, is a vape pen bag, but you can use it for anything. You can use it for makeup. That one's not odor-free, but the other little smaller one is. Very convenient. I can't wait to give that away. Urbana, founded by a woman, and her partner comes from New York's handbag design, luxury handbag design industry. So really cute little bags. Can't wait to show them live. And now I turn it over to Dr. Swathi, who will give us a little background, and then we'll jump right into the topic of adaptogens. Hi, Dr. Swathi.
Hello. Yes, so as was mentioned, I'm Dr. Swathi. Thank you again so much for having me. I love being here and interacting with the Elementa community. So I'll just give a little bit of background about me. So I'm an integrative health pharmacist and medical cannabis consultant, and I'm located in LA. And I co-founded, and I'm currently the only pharmacist in the US that has formal specialized postdoctoral training in integrative medicine and cannabis. And so I did that training specifically at an independent natural pharmacy, as well as an integrative HIV clinic, both also located in LA. And really, my practice looks at the intersection between multiple modalities for healing, so that within integrative health, there could be a combination of modalities that are great for patients. For example, it could include prescription medications, perhaps it does not. It really just depends the patient and their wants and their needs. So apart from that, as I mentioned, I'm a medical cannabis consultant for a few companies. Some of them are CBD botanical brands, and they have both of those in it, some of them having adaptogens, which is really exciting. So I do a lot of multimedia content creation for them. I do a lot of like medically driven content, just depending on what they're interested in. I also have an opportunity to answer a lot of their customer service questions that are scientifically driven. So I'm able to either look into the data and give a background and give an answer. But it's really nice. I'm able to like still have that personalized interaction, even though it's through a company platform. And then apart from that, I'm really just passionate about education when it comes to natural medicines. I'm involved in conducting and publishing original research, mainly based around cannabinoid medicine. I'm adjunct faculty at colleges of pharmacy and colleges of traditional Chinese medicine in the LA area. And I'm also working on some online courses. Currently, I just finished writing the one that is an intro to endocannabinoid system and cannabis therapeutics for pharmacists. It's the first one for pharmacists, really exciting. So we're just going through the accreditation process, and then after that, that'll be live. So I will send out that information. The company I'm working with also has really, really great intro to endocannabinoid system courses for other practitioners as well as patients too. So definitely can let you know about that information because it's very, very multifaceted. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. I think a lot of people are going to be really interested. I get questions all the time for the layperson. How can we take some courses to better understand it? So that sounds great. I can't wait to hear more about that.
Yeah, absolutely. It's actually through the platform with Dr. Junella Chin and Joe Dolce with the Medical Cannabis Mentor. Yeah, so you're probably familiar with it too.
Oh, good. Okay, that's a great one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, great. So that's a little bit about me. Really just passionate about the endocannabinoid system and the therapeutic potential of plant medicines overall, and the importance of food as medicine when it comes to nutrition, and then really how all of those processes work in synergy to promote the mind-body-spirit connection. So I'm really excited to be here. Thanks again.
Oh, I love it. Fantastic. Right. So those of you who are watching live at the moment on Zoom, you have the ability to chat. Right now, since we're doing slides, we're not going to be able to see the chat, or at least I cannot see the chat. So we'll get to your comments or questions toward the latter part of the presentation. There is a time period for Q&A. So otherwise, we're just going to go through and put forth as much information as we can, starting with a simple question. What are adaptogens?
The number one question, especially in these times, I get asked this question quite often, especially because so many products, as you briefly mentioned, there's so many products now coming out that either have adaptogens in them, or they're either that or like products that you can add to other things in your daily routine. So I'm getting a little ahead of myself, so I'm getting excited, but we'll talk a little bit more about that in a bit. So really, what is an adaptogen? So it was introduced into the scientific literature by a Russian toxicologist in the 1950s. So really this terminology is quite new. And it refers to substances, generally natural substances, that increase the state of nonspecific resistance. So what does all that mean?
Yeah, I was like, really? What is that?
Yeah, exactly. So that's the real formal definition, but really adaptogens are natural substances, as I mentioned, that are considered to facilitate the body's capacity to adapt to stress and really decrease its sensitivity to stress. So I'm going to delve into that a little bit more on the next slide. Okay, great. So how exactly do they work? So when we're talking about the stress response, there's 3 distinct phases. There's the alarm phase, the phase of resistance, and the phase of exhaustion. So to give you an example, I'm going to use like tiredness and fatigue as the example. So the alarm phase is when the stressor occurs. So that's when you're starting to get that tiredness. And then the phase of resistance is your body trying to cope with that stressor. And so that is when it will lead to fatigue. And then from there, the phase of exhaustion really is well named for this example because it really is that absolute exhaustion of your body and that burnout and breakdown of certain systems. And so adaptogens extend that second phase, so the phase of resistance, to avoid or lessen the impact of that phase of exhaustion. So we're just continuing that on so you're not getting that burnout or that breakdown. So adaptogens overall, when I think about adaptogens, I think about homeostasis. And the homeostasis is balance of the body. And so adaptogens really help maintain the body's homeostasis. And it also helps in the process of adapting to both external and internal factors. So by external, I mean like environmental or something going on in your life, like perhaps like with your job or something like that external that you can't control. But then there's also the emotional internal factors that can cause stress on your body too. And those two are very much intrinsically linked as well. So adaptogens can really help improve the quality of life and really help even restore the body's physiological functions, which I think is fascinating from like a biological standpoint, because not only can it maintain the homeostasis, but it can actually restore the functioning to the way it was originally supposed to be and how it was prior to all the stress. So just overall increasing your body's resilience to stress and not having as much sensitivity to it.
All right.
Great. All right, so the next one, examples of adaptogens. This is a perfect image because I'm actually going to, the ones that I'm going to delve into are all on the slide. But these are really a lot of the most common ones that I get asked about, or the most common ones that you'll see in products, like holy basil, which is tulsi is another name for that one. Maca is another one. Those are 2 that I'm not going to be going into super detailed today, but if you want to learn more, please let me know because I love talking about adaptogens. But I will be talking specifically about ashwagandha, which is on this slide, as well as rhodiola, Asian ginseng, American ginseng, Siberian ginseng. So all those 3 and what the distinctions are between them and where you would use one versus another, and if they all are really ginsengs or not, which is an interesting question. And then I also will be talking about a few medicinal mushrooms. On this slide, we do have the reishi mushroom, but I'll also be talking about lion's mane and chaga. All right, next slide. Great, so the therapeutic uses of adaptogens. So because these are all herbs, especially the ones that I will talk about today, the ones that were on that previous slide, there's so many potential therapeutic uses and benefits that come from herbs. And I find that when I interact with Western practitioners, it's really difficult for them to wrap their head around herbs and botanicals overall, and cannabis included, really, because they're plants with multiple constituents, multiple compounds, dynamics, the way that the compounds interact with one another within the plant, the way it interacts with the body. And that's just very different from the one molecule, one effect model that we're used to when it comes to prescription medications, where we know it is as a medication being that one molecule, and we have that expected effect, and we have the expected side effects. And herbs are just so much more complicated than that. And so, I mean, that really helps in terms of all the possible benefits you can get out of it, with so many aspects being a part of the plant, but it also makes it that much more confusing to anyone who's just starting to learn about it. And so the conditions that I'll discuss today with the adaptogens that I briefly mentioned, those are the ones that have the most research and the ones that have been used medicinally for years and years, whether that's in traditional Chinese medicine or Ayurveda or even like in Western herbal practices. But I did really want to mention that there is really incredible ongoing research with other conditions and other possibilities in which the herbs can be used. So you might know someone who used the herb for something else, and got really, really great benefit out of it. And I might not be discussing that simply because I'm just going from like an evidence-based perspective. Great.
All right.
Okay.
Are you ready to go?
Next one?
All right.
Yes, we are ready. Okay. So the first one is ashwagandha. And so mainly with ashwagandha, when I think of it, I think about it for patients who are wired and tired, is what people say. So it's people who are still like wired. They can't, their mind just will not stop. There's so much going on, and they just can't find a way to actually fall asleep because their mind is just racing still. And so it can really improve and regulate the sleep cycle. And so generally it's recommended to be taken towards like the end of the day or the evening because it can increase sedation. I do know some people who take it in the beginning of the day and they do not have that sedative effect. So it's possible that that is not going to impact everyone. I'm just saying in general, it does have that increased sedation. And so it can help people with sleep. And as we know, I mean, I also really like talking about sleep hygiene, so I can go on a rant about that, but I will stop myself. That like the sleep cycle and sleep itself is so important to so many other aspects of our life that yes, I am saying that ashwagandha does help with sleep, but sleep helps with so many other things that you could even extend it to say ashwagandha can be helpful in so many different aspects as well, and really be tied to a lot of these different therapeutic benefits that we'll talk about with the other adaptogens. And then in addition, it can really help with physical stress. So physical stress meaning if someone is like moving, for example, like I recently just moved and you have to move a lot of big boxes and things like that, like it could help with that actual like physical rigor on your body too. And I did want to mention, so when I'm talking about that, when I'm talking about the increased sedation, it is really important, really for any of these adaptogens, to consult a specialist. The specialist could be a traditional Chinese medicine herbalist. They could be an acupuncturist, and because they all have that same training in traditional Chinese medicine. So it could be your acupuncturist. It could be another herbalist that you know. It could be an integrative health practitioner like me. But I think it's really important because, like for example, with this one, because it can increase sedation, other people might be, or some people might be taking other medications when it comes to helping them sleep. And a lot of those medications also have highly sedative effects. So you don't want to be amplifying that to the point that it could be potentially problematic. So if you are thinking about adding something like ashwagandha for sleep, it would be great to just run it by someone who has that specialty. And really, actually, this is something I'm very, very passionate about when it comes to adding any sort of like herbal ingredient or herbal product, or really any type of integrative product into your regimen, just because there's so much amazing research when it comes to looking at the improved patient outcomes when a patient and practitioner work as a team to achieve the patient's goals. And I think that's really a mainstay of integrative health. And I think one of the best aspects, in my opinion, because there's so many options when it comes to integrative health and so many modalities that you can look at, that when you're an integrative health practitioner, you just lay out all the potential options that could potentially help the patient. And then from there, they can decide, depending on their lifestyle and really what they're looking for out of the treatment with their goals, they can decide what works best for them. And so you're really working as a team to achieve what the patient wants. And yeah, so there's just really incredible background and information when it comes to that. And so I just think having like a specialist on board could be really helpful, even if it is that one simple question to just make sure.
Yeah, I do have a question, actually, since I have a specialist right here with me at the moment. So if someone is taking a little bit of THC to help with sleep, actually like a CBD or a THC CBD kind of combo, and then I'll be specific. So if I were to take like 2.5 to 5 milligrams of THC in an edible to help me stay asleep, but I also have an ashwagandha tonic, a sleep tonic, like an herbal sleep tonic that I got from the Alchemist Kitchen in New York City. And I've always just been hesitant to take it. kind of not knowing what's going to happen. I mean, is the worst
Mm-hmm.
that could happen be that I'll just end up being drowsier, sleepier, or groggy in the morning? Or what could I expect from that? And is there any real major danger if I'm not taking any other kind of medication at all? I mean, I don't mean to be specific. Let's pretend that's a general question.
No, but I do think that could be extended to a general question, because I think a lot of people are in that same boat where they're taking something that really helps them sleep, but maybe they're looking for that extra push. And I think ashwagandha would be a great option. I think in terms of the dose that you're taking of THC with ashwagandha, I'm not super worried. I think the main thing that could happen that I think that practitioners would worry about would be that you would be overly sedated. But if your goal is sleep, then that's actually a positive thing rather than a negative thing. So I think that overall, I wouldn't really be worried about it. There is the possibility of being a little groggy, but it's, again, not something I'm very worried about with the doses that you're taking. And also, I would say start low, go slow, which is what people say with cannabis. But I would also say that with ashwagandha too, that just start with a little bit and see if it helps. If it doesn't, then continue on. And then maybe if you've reached the point where you are feeling a little groggy, or maybe you're not able to get up and feel as refreshed in the same way, then perhaps go back and take a little bit less.
Got it. Ah, okay, interesting. All right, on to the next one?
Yes, on to the next one.
There you go.
All right, so then the next one is Rhodiola. So the best research when it comes to Rhodiola, and especially like recommendations that I've given in the pharmacy, that I've given in the clinic, all come down to like mild depression and mild anxiety. So it's really helpful for mood balance because it helps modulate the central nervous system. And in addition to that, it can also provide energy, which is really incredible when you think about people who are experiencing depressive symptoms. One of those is that lack of energy. So you're getting like a double whammy. Sounds like negative, but you're getting two amazing things just in taking one product. And so if we're comparing and contrasting just with ashwagandha, so it's the opposite, because ashwagandha helps with sleep. So this one you'd want to take earlier on in the day because it provides you energy. And also it really will help improve your mood, and it also helps ease anxiety. So really important too. And then when it comes to herbs, I think there's a misconception that all herbs are safe simply because they're natural. And even though that for the most part that is mostly true, there are like certain ones like rhodiola, for example, that is metabolized by some of the same enzymes that metabolize a lot of the medications that are on the market for depression and anxiety. So there could be a drug interaction if the patient is taking this as an adjunct or as like an add-on therapy to their SSRI, for example. So that's another reason why, like, if you wanted to ask me a quick question or like refer to a specialist, I think that could be really, really helpful, just because it depends on the dose and it depends on the patient's other diagnoses and really also what symptoms they're experiencing when it comes to that mild depression and anxiety. So I think that it could be so helpful. I know people who actually don't identify with saying that they have mild depression and anxiety, but they take it just as like a mood lift in the morning. And I know some practitioners who just take it as like one of their supplements, and they just feel better overall, and they feel like they have more energy.
Now, I've never heard of this one. What sort of forms does it come in? Like, how do you take it?
So I think the most common one I've seen is capsules. So there are quite a few companies that will do like the whole plant type of capsule, which is my favorite. Just and there's no additives, none of that extra stuff that we don't want. So I think the most common I've seen is that. That being said, there are like rhodiola teas, and that was something I was going to talk about a little bit later when it comes to formulation, just because when we're talking about adaptogens, so many of them have so many formulations that there's so many opportunities to integrate it into your lifestyle or into your daily life. Because maybe if you don't like the powders, because some of the powders have been known to be a little like on the bitter side and have that like earthy flavor when it comes to adaptogens and herbs. So some people would rather take a capsule. And actually, some of those capsules are co-formulated with other adaptogens. So you're just taking one capsule with a bunch of adaptogens in it, and you're getting your, daily dose, so to speak. So yeah, it really just depends. I think what I've seen most commonly used is capsules, but I also know that there are quite a few other formulations that could be an option.
Okay. Yeah, I've actually tried some adaptogen gummies, and you're right. It's got a very, very unusual flavor. So like if you're thinking gummy and you're thinking you're going to get a little hit of sweet or some sort of pungent, it's pungent, but in a very different way. Like I can't even place it. It's almost licoricey, but
Yeah.
it's very different. And so it took me a while to get used to them because of the flavor. So anyway, well, that's interesting then to know about that. And I'm sure we'll hear a little bit more. Next one, next slide.
Yes, next slide. All right, so the next one is Schizandra. So this is a very commonly used herb in traditional Chinese medicine, and it's actually called the 5-flavored fruit. And in my training, I had the opportunity to audit some courses at colleges of traditional Chinese medicine. So I was teaching some on Western pharmacology and Ayurveda, but then I was also had the opportunity to audit a few upper level courses. And so one of them, the professor actually brought in Schizandra, and we all got to try it. And it really does have that 5 flavors. So it's a sour, bitter, sweet, pungent, and salty, all 5 of those.
Wow.
And so really, as you're experiencing it in your mouth, you really do taste all of them. But what I learned from that professor is that the one that you taste the strongest is the one that is most correlated with what you need supplementation in. So for example, sour is correlated with certain functionality of an organ. And so if you're tasting more sour, then you want to supplement or support that organ. So very, very interesting. The entire methodology behind traditional Chinese medicine, I just think is so interesting. So yeah, so Schizandra, that's very, very commonly used. It's really, really good for providing energy. And you'll find that as a theme when I'm talking about a lot of these adaptogens is that it really can help with providing energy. And not a lot, but I do know quite a few products on the market right now that are advertising themselves as products that you can use instead of coffee. So instead of looking to caffeine, you can really get that same boost of energy and stimulation from a combination of adaptogens, which I mean, depending on the person, if you like the taste of coffee, I say go for the coffee sometimes, but then also maybe go for the adaptogens other days. I think when it comes to your daily routine, I think a balance is really important. So if you like adaptogens or you're interested in it, I think that could be a great way to start integrating it into your life as just try it instead of coffee maybe one day. Or there's some really interesting products out there that actually have adaptogens as well as some of the other phytochemicals that are really popular like curcumin from turmeric and things like that too, or cacao is another really popular one too. So with Schizandra, yes, energy, very important, but also it can help support the liver. And so a lot of the papers that I've looked at, the research papers, they really do talk about patients who have all sorts of liver conditions, whether that's fatty liver, whether that's liver disease, hepatitis. So there's been a lot of really interesting research when it comes to supporting your liver function. And liver function really comes down to detoxifying. That's really what it's great for in the body. And so if we can help support our liver function and help that detoxing, it really will help your overall, how you feel, because how you feel is really a semblance of how your organs are doing, if that makes sense. Your external really is a reflection of your internal. I think it's a better way of saying it. I think also Schizandra, another really great aspect is supporting immune function. So I know around this time, that's a big question with the outbreak, is there something I can take? Honestly, I think any of the adaptogens I'm going to talk about today could be potentially useful for that. There are certain ones, like Schizandra is one of them, where I look to it more for immune function. It can help with like the common cold, for example, or like any other like potential issues like that when it comes to immune function. But I really do think like overall, like if you are trying to or interested in adding adaptogens into your regimen, that any or all of these could be really great. Of course, some of them, as I mentioned, have other aspects. You might gravitate towards one versus another, or your specialist might help you figure that out. But otherwise, really, a lot of them do support and provide energy for immune function too. Okay, next slide. All right, so now we are talking about ginseng. So there's Asian ginseng and American ginseng. And I feel like it's very easy to get them confused because also there's Chinese ginseng and Korean ginseng. So Asian, Chinese, and Korean ginseng, all of those are the same name, so to speak, for the same plant. So if we're looking at that in particular, those are all Panax ginseng. And so when we're comparing Asian ginseng and American ginseng, I mean, really, they have a lot of the same effects, which is, I think, why they get confused quite frequently. Of course, where they originate from is where they get their name. So the Asian ginseng from those respective countries versus American ginseng is from North America, and it's actually mostly produced in Canada and Ontario. And so a big point when it comes to ginseng is that it could cause GI irritation, so gastrointestinal, like stomach upset kind of a thing. So if you are taking ginseng, I would recommend it, whether it's a capsule or any formulation that you're taking and consuming orally, that you take it with food or a full glass of water, because I think that could really help ease any sort of, unease that you have from taking a ginseng product. But that being said, they both are overall very well tolerated, not many side effects associated with them. And if you're trying to decide between the two, this is a question I get a lot. If the patient's trying to decide between American or Asian ginseng, I would say, depending on the patient's willingness to spend money, I would say start with the less expensive one, as long as it's a good brand. I would say start with the less expensive one, and each brand kind of prices it differently depending on where they're getting their actual plant from. And I would try that to see if it works for you. And then depending on how that works for you, if you tuned into one of the previous webinars that I had an opportunity to do with Elementa, it was how to talk to your provider about cannabis. So I would also kind of recommend a similar thing when you're starting to use adaptogens, that you start a diary or journal of sorts and just see if you're feeling any different or feeling any sort of impact. Like if you're feeling like you have more energy, like ginseng in particular is great for energy and vitality is really the term that's associated with it. And then also it's great for cognitive function, which you'll see again in one of the mushrooms I'm going to talk about. And so you'll see a lot of products together that have, so the mushroom is lion's mane, so lion's mane and the ginseng products together, because they can really help with the cognitive function overall. Okay. Great. So the next one is called Siberian ginseng. Very interesting because it's not actually a ginseng. It's just got that name and it's kind of stuck for years. But otherwise it is called eleuthero. And I think it also got very easily confused with ginseng because it can be used for a lot of the same things. So that energy, vitality, potential cognitive function, the improvement in it, really supporting brain health. I think that that's like probably one of the reasons, but it's known to be a less potent version. So if someone is perhaps a little weary of integrating something that could be more potent or more strong, then maybe they could start with an eleuthero if that's an option. Also eleuthero, there's really interesting research coming out and that has been published when it comes to potentially helping with memory. and like neurodegenerative diseases. And so that's something that could be like an add-on benefit if the person is looking to eleuthero. Perhaps that's great for the aging population when it comes to trying to support memory function. And then also within that same population, eleuthero can be really good for chronic disease management. So when I say chronic disease management, I mean like diabetes, hypertension, that type of thing. So eleuthero really is multifaceted, very similarly to a lot of the other adaptogens I'm talking about, in that it can have a lot of different benefits and a lot of different aspects to it. But this one in particular, I've seen data really across the board when it comes to a lot of the different uses. All right, next slide.
Okay, there we go.
Okay, great. So here we have medicinal mushrooms. So from the images here, I can point out the difference. So lion's mane is the one on the top left, and then the one to its right, that is reishi, and then the one that's the farthest down, that one is chaga. So just keep that in mind as I'm chatting. So overall, mushrooms have been known to support immunity. So that has been another big recommendation that I've had when people are trying to figure out which adaptogens should I start with, in particular this time when people are weary of potentially getting sick or feeling under the weather, so to speak. I think that mushrooms could be a great place to start. There are quite a few products that are called like a mushroom complex, for example, that will have a lot of different mushrooms in them. So you can get a lot of different benefits. So when we're talking about lion's mane, the main thing with lion's mane, which I didn't expect that wordplay, but is brain health and cognitive function. So really important. It's in quite a few coffee products that I've seen because it's great for taking if you know that you have a lot of work that day, if you have a big deadline coming up, if you're studying. I think that would be a great mushroom to turn to. The next one I'll talk about is reishi. And so reishi has gotten the nickname of the mushroom of immortality. And that's really because it helps with like the homeostasis and balance of calming the mind and really relaxing the mind. And that's another reason why it's great for sleep. So I do know people who take it in the morning for like an overall like balanced type of feel. And there, of course, is great research when it comes to autoimmune diseases too. But I know most people who are looking for some sort of natural way when it comes to adaptogens to sleep, they're looking to reishi or ashwagandha for the most part. And then chaga is another one I wanted to talk about. So chaga is known for sustained energy. So as I have mentioned, a lot of them are great for energy, but chaga in particular is the one that's looked to for like sustained all day energy. So when, like, for example, if we're comparing like the caffeine from coffee versus like the caffeine from matcha, there's more sustained energy from matcha, but I would even say this is like a step further and saying that chaga could be even more sustained than matcha, but I would put them in like a similar like order in that way. And it could be recommended to be taken in the beginning of the day for that boost. It could be taken after lunch as well if you know you have a lot going on in the afternoon. But I do think that could be a great way to integrate it into your like morning routine. And then
nice.
One that I thought about adding that I thought about this morning was cordyceps.
Oh my gosh, it's so weird that you just said that. Well, the reason it's so weird is that I was going to mention, right when you were done with this, that I was contacted by a company that was creating a powder mix, and the basis of it is cordyceps. So,
yeah.
And okay, so I'm going to tell you about that product in a moment, but go ahead and tell us more about that. And next time, I'm really good at making last minute slides. I'm happy to go find a picture of it later. But go ahead, cordyceps.
Okay. Yeah, so cordyceps, known for also energy, of course, but energy when it comes to athletic performance. So you'll see in some products now that it is coming out to be used as something in like a pre-workout drink kind of a thing. It's being mixed a lot with protein for that specific population. And it's also supposed to help speed up recovery. So I know some people who take it prior to exercise, some people who take it after exercise. And because it does have those aspects, and those adaptogenic properties, it also has been linked to potentially be anti-aging. So I know a lot of products are looking to add cordyceps, even though, like, I would say initially it was not one of the most popular ones that has been used with the same frequency as like chaga or reishi. But cordyceps is really, really getting a lot of buzz right now from the athletic community. And what was the product you were going to mention?
Yeah. So by the way, cordyceps, for those, since we don't have it on the screen, is CORDYCEPS. The product is called Hone, HONE, honeblends.com, honeblends.com. And it's a powder that contains monk fruit, matcha, cordyceps, and B vitamin. And it was really pitched as energy boosting with a little bit of anti-inflammatory. Energy and mood boosting is how it was kind of pitched as. It's a fairly new company, young folks, young ones, meaning I'm 55. So working on this, they had some really interesting concepts, and they're very much about adaptogens, and they're looking for the most portable, convenient ways of taking it. So the forms of it, but this one looks like it's a powder in a jar that you can add to your coffee or drink instead. Anyway, it was just so interesting because this whole time you were talking about mushrooms, I'm like, what is that mushroom called? Because I wanted to mention this company, and I couldn't for the life of me. And then all of a sudden you said it right as I found their information. So yeah, that is the adaptogen that they identified as having a lot more potential because it wasn't sort of oversaturated in the market.
Exactly.
So there you go.
Yeah, definitely. That's a really interesting combination. Matcha and cordyceps and wow. I would definitely love to learn more about that.
Okay, I'll connect you with them.
Because it does have that long-lasting. Oh, yeah, great. It definitely has that long-lasting energy aspect. And maybe they're even looking into the anti-aging aspect. I didn't have time today, but because I was trying to focus on like botanicals when it comes to adaptogens, but there are other types of adaptogens. For example, matcha is one of them. Matcha, or some of the components that are in matcha, have adaptogenic properties. So that's probably another reason why they're looking at matcha as putting it in that adaptogenic formula.
And I was also recently, I had not heard this before, but I've recently heard cannabis considered an adaptogenic herb. And I'd never heard that. Would you qualify cannabis as adaptogenic?
So that's highly contested, actually, at the moment. I feel like everyone has their strong opinion. If we're looking at the definition as something that can help maintain your body's homeostasis and really promote resilience and that adaptation to stressors, I mean, I think cannabis fits that perfectly. So I think if we're thinking of the definition, then it fits it very well. But I think it's perhaps more nuanced than that. So I'm not 100% sure, but if we're looking at it just like objectively, then I think that definitely it could be considered an adaptogen.
Okay, very interesting. Next slide.
Yes, next. Great. So why do adaptogens matter? So I've hinted at a lot of this already, so I don't want to say the same thing 46 times. But with chronic use, adaptogens can have an overall protective effect on health and really improve quality of life. And I think that's probably why they've become so popular recently. People have really realized that about a lot of plant medicines, including adaptogens, because really, I mean, in Ayurveda, traditional Chinese medicine, other ancient medicinal practices, they've been used for thousands of years. So there really is a lot of backing to what people are saying, even though it seems like it's something new in the media or something, right now. And then I think apart from the outbreak and everything going on, I think that this could really help, because right now the healthcare system, in my opinion, is really more of like a sick care system. Like we're just being reactive to things that are happening. And so I think that this could be a part of that preventative, like, move in healthcare, that we can start looking at how we can prevent all of the ways that stressors are going to impact our body, because stressors are inevitable in life. There's no way that you can avoid all of them. But if we can help our body become resilient to them, then we would be doing our body such an incredible justice. So I think, and a lot of integrative medicine as well really comes back to preventative care. So I think like adaptogens fit in so perfectly in that way.
I also want to point out something that I had learned and get your thoughts on it. I was told that in a way our brains and our sort of physiological reactions to stress cannot distinguish between what might be considered a good stressor versus a bad stressor. So for example, you mentioned moving to a new place could be for moving to a new job. All those things could be exciting and wonderful opportunities, and yet your body will still feel stress about it, almost to the same sorts of levels, but maybe in a different way than grief. So if you've lost a job or lost a loved one, that we look at those as negative stressors, and yet the body or the brain, I guess, has a hard time distinguishing. You still have a physiological reaction, can be equally sort of fatigued or internally, beaten up or burned out because of just too many stressors in general. So I don't know, have you ever heard about that? What are your thoughts on just sort of the nuances of stress?
Definitely. No, I've definitely heard that. I agree with that. I think that any sort of like, I don't want to say extreme emotion, but any sort of emotion that is like deteriorating from baseline could be considered a stressor. I think stressor and like stress in general, that term has a very negative connotation. And so I think when people think stress, like if I think of physical stress, I think of also like if someone has hypertension and your body is working so hard to do something because of that increased pressure, your body is working so much harder, your heart really is working so much harder to pump the blood. And so I think that if I'm thinking about it like that and relating it to ways that like adaptogens or other like botanicals can work in the body, I think you really can think of stress in that way as like, regardless of whether it's positive or negative, it's just making your body and your organs and your mind, or maybe not like your conscious mind, but like your subconscious mind, just work so much harder that if you have something to help you adapt to the inevitable stressors, I think that would just be so helpful to everyone.
Okay. Just letting everybody know, we're going to open up to questions after, I think we've got 2 more slides left, lots of fantastic information, and then we're going to move on into questions. So why should adaptogens be part of my wellness routine? And then we're going to talk about exactly how do we incorporate it. So let's go with this one.
So I think when it comes to the wellness routine, I really like the concept of like a routine, because adaptogens are herbs that their best produced effect is actually with long-term use. And so I know some people have gotten really incredible results in a matter of weeks, but I do think that you see the real results from it after many months and really that long-term use. And I think that that's very opposite of the way that a lot of people think about like supporting and healing their body, because everyone wants that quick fix, so to speak. So things like adaptogens have that lasting benefit when you are ingesting it or consuming it or having it be a part of your routine with frequency, whether that's daily, monthly, but daily, weekly. Just starting to integrate it into your routine could be just so beneficial, but you just might not see those benefits as quickly as you would initially think. And I think that also when I think about adaptogens, I also think about like that delayed, gratification that you can get from all of these like long-term and long-lasting effects. And I think about like exercise regimens, like that's another great way of thinking about something that you have to work towards and really be consistent and have a routine with that to really see the outcome that you're looking for, whether that is to lose weight or gain muscle or anything in between. So I think that that is also another good way of thinking about it. Another good way to think about it is like if people are changing their nutritional lifestyle or their diet, and trying to, for example, incorporate more whole foods into their diet, that also is something that comes with a routine, and you'll have those long-lasting effects down the road. So if we think about adaptogens in the same way as like incorporating something into your lifestyle that could have that long-term impact, I think that that's a really good way to start thinking about how we can add adaptogens into our lives.
And so how do you incorporate it? And I think you were talking about different forms and different times of the day. And
exactly, yeah. So as I mentioned before, I want to leave some time for questions, so I'm not going to go into it too much, but there are adaptogenic teas, there are coffees, there are foods, the powders, like the protein powders that were mentioned, all of those. So I think that there really are so many ways and so many aspects. I recently came across a really cool product that's a cookie dough, actually. So it has adaptogens in the cookie dough. So it's really like, it's the market is really taking advantage of the incredible benefits that you can get from adaptogens and putting it into so many different mediums for consumption. So I really do think that it is possible for everyone to add to their regimen just because there are so many options. You just have to find the option that suits you and your lifestyle the best.
Excellent. I want to know about that cookie dough. Is it gluten-free?
Oh, yes. It's so good.
Oh, my gosh. I cannot wait to find out more. All right. Perfect. So a reminder, you can ask some questions. I'm scrolling through really quick. Is there a favorite place to purchase adaptogenic herbs? Where do you recommend? And especially since we all can order online, these are legal to have shipped, correct?
Yeah, definitely. Oh, they're legal because we're just thinking about it as other plant medicines. So, so far the FDA or the DEA hasn't said anything bad about them because as far as we know, they're overall safe and overall non-toxic. Of course, I'm making a generalization, so we shouldn't make generalizations all the time, but a lot of herbs really are safe, particularly the ones that I talked about today. There's so many different sites, and I don't know if I should be showing favoritism or anything to like a certain site or brand necessarily, but that's something I would be more comfortable with if you emailed me, that we can have a more like offline conversation about, because I mean, that's a great question. Where should you look for them? I think also when it comes to that, just trying to find, if you do have a specialist or an herbalist, they'll have a really good idea about where to get things locally, because that's where they go to get it locally. I know in LA, there are quite a few good herb shops that people talk about, people being the acupuncturists and the herbalists that I've interacted with or worked with in the clinic, and where they recommend their patients go to get them. And also a lot of the schools, if you have colleges of traditional Chinese medicine in the area, they also tend to have clinics, and some of them have stores associated. And they always, in my experience, have very, very high quality products for what they're teaching with.
So, well, since you're saying we should email you, why don't you let us know your email address? I'll type it in.
Sure. I can type it in right now, actually, just to make it quicker. It's just Swathi at drswathi.com.
Okay, perfect. So if you do want some additional information specific to places where you can get. Now, someone also asked, would good quality essential oils qualify as adaptogenic substances?
That is an incredible question. I've never been asked that before. We're thinking about the definition. I mean, that's a really interesting question. I don't know about, like, physiologically if therapeutic aromatherapy or essential oils really have that same effect of potentially like restoring physiological function and helping the body adapt like on a physiological standpoint. But when it comes to aromatherapy is so fascinating when you start thinking about the way that it's inhaled and the olfactory system and how the olfactory system with terpenes, then all those terpenes that have the therapeutic benefit that we know terpenes from cannabis and everything. So it's really interesting to think about from that standpoint, but I don't off the bat, I don't think I would put them in the same category as adaptogens.
However, adaptogens can be added into oils, correct? Extracts of adaptogens. Mm-hmm. So I've seen a couple of herbal blend oils that include CBD and adaptogens.
And that's also like the other flip side too, is that some terpenes are being added to some of the adaptogenic products. So it's looking at it the same type of way. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I have picked our random winner already, but let me show what our random winner has won. 2 little bags from a company called Urbana, ERBANNA. This is a little odor-free bag. Very cute little thing. And this is a not quite odor-free, but it's called a vape case. But as I mentioned, it could be used for all types of things, including makeup. These bags are just so lovely that they could be, this could be a coin purse, this could be your makeup, lip gloss, etc., or other things. So our winner today, and hopefully she hears, because we once had a winner and we kept saying, you won, make sure you, and they didn't hear. Nancy Southern, you have won these 2 adorable bags. They're going to actually be shipped from Alaska. I'm going to be shipping them to you. So the way that you can get your bags is to email me, and I'm typing in my email address. There's my email address, aliza@elementa.com. Email me your mailing address. I will give it to Dr. Swathi. Congratulations on that. And again, for everybody who is live and can see the text, urbana.com. That is where you can get these lovely bags. They range sort of in price from, I think, $10 to $15 all the way up to about $75, depending on the design, and different sizes. There's even a backpack size. It's really interesting, but they are considered, they're supposed to be odor, what do they call it? Odor-free, smell-proof is what they call it, smell-proof. Anyway, they're quite nice. So finally, where else do we find you, Dr. Swathi?
So that's my email. I put in the chat there. So Swathi at Dr. Swathi with the doctor spelled out. So DOCTOR. And then my first name is spelled SWATHI. That's quite helpful too. And then my website is also the same. So it's just Dr. Swathi. So DOCTORSWATHI.com. And please do not hesitate to email me any questions. I know that this is a lot of information. A lot of it is new, if not all of it. So if you spend time and you think about it and you reflect it and you watch it back and you have any other questions, just let me know, because I know how confusing it can be.
Well, I'm just going to mention a couple of things coming up. If you happen to be watching this in August, on August 5th, Mindfulness 101, Quiet a Busy Mind with Joy Rains. Sunday, August 9th, Minor Cannabinoids, Delta H, THC, CBG, and CBN with Dr. Bridget Williams. And Wednesday, August 12th, Love in the Age of a Pandemic with love coach Robin Gorman Newman. So that's what's coming up. And until then, everybody take care, stay safe, and look at those adaptogens as a way to cope with the stress that we're facing. So thank you, Dr. Swathi. Always so cool to have you here.
Oh, thank you.